Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome back indeed. So, today's story takes us to an amazing place in Michigan called Traverse City. If you have never been there, it's an absolute must. It is the most populated city in the northern west side of Michigan. The city is located at the head of the east and west arms of the Grand Traverse Bay, which is a 32-mile-long bay of Lake Michigan. Grand Traverse Bay is divided into two arms by the 17-mile-long Old Mission Peninsula. Traverse City is also nicknamed the cherry capital of the world, and it is the place for cherry production. The National Cherry Festival is held here in Traverse City, which attracts approximately 500,000 visitors every year. The sailing in the bay is bar none, and people come from everywhere to sail in it. It truly feels like you are in someplace tropical. During the summer, there is not a better place to be in Michigan. It has great shops, the beautiful bay, wine country, and lots of boating. You can drive up the peninsula and hit the wineries, which I've done before, and it is so much fun. But once summer ends and the tourists leave, the locals hunker down. The harsh winter is just around the corner. Lake effect snowfall contributes to an annual snow accumulation, which can average around 80 inches. And for those of you who don't know what lake effect snow is, it's snow that is produced as cold winds blow clouds over the warm water, thus filling the clouds, and then down comes the snow. Snow can be seen as early as September and lasts as long as May. In 1979, a record low was recorded at negative 37 degrees, and that's cold. Oh my God, that's cold.
Yeah, it's super cold. But also, I mean, I've been to Michigan a few times for work and because my bestie lives there. But I have been, and I think this predates our friendship, Trace. But when I was in, I want to say it was Traverse, they have a bakery there also that they're like world famous for. Do they not? Is that the place that I'm thinking of?
It may be. I don't know. I've never been.
I want to say it's even called like the Traverse Bakery or something, and they have them in other places. Like I think they have one of their bakeries located also over near the college there. You know, the
Michigan State.
Is that the college with the movie that they made?
What movie?
Oh my God, Rudy.
Oh, U of M. That's in Ann Arbor. University of Michigan. That's in Ann Arbor.
Right. So there's one of those bakeries over there too, I think. If I'm not mistaken. But it was phenomenal from what I remember. Granted, it was years ago. But if it's still there, that's also a must go.
Yeah,
I'm going to go for the baked sweet.
I know. We definitely have to go when you and Nina come here because it is stunning. It's hard to believe it's Michigan. It really is. It's amazing.
Yeah. I do know. I've been there, and I think that's where the bakery is, but I could be crossing stories over. But it is beautiful. I do remember it.
Yeah.
So are you going to tell me when all the tourists go away, there's malice in that area?
Yeah, we're about to get there. There's some really bad malice. Really bad. So bad. So bad I'm going to have to give a warning. All right, so here's something I didn't know is that during the off-season, the Detroit Red Wings of the National Hockey League, they hold their training camp at Traverse City's Central Ice Arena. That I just didn't know. And it makes me want to pack up the Jeep and head north with Todd like right now because I could totally use a vacation. But I'm not here to talk about how much I want to go on vacation. I have something much darker to tell you about this freshwater paradise. The story I'm going to tell you today is probably the worst crime that has ever happened in Traverse City. So here's your warning, guys. It's going to be quite explicit. This is Season 2, Episode 12, Kalee Bruce. Kalee Bruce was vibrant, kind, and always had a smile on her face. To me, if Snow White was a human, she would be Kalee. She had shoulder-length, dark brown hair, shining bright blue eyes, and a smile that would simmer down anyone that was in a bad mood. Everyone loved her. She was always laughing. Kalee worked at the Beach Condominium Hotel and Resort in Traverse City as a front desk clerk and greeted everyone with her bubbly personality and, of course, that amazing smile. The hotel is located on US 31 North in Traverse City. It is right on Grand Traverse Bay, and this place is listed as one of Michigan's best hotels. Kalee was 18 years old, and in the fall of 1998, she started her first year at Northwestern Michigan College, which is a community college in Traverse City. She lived in the dorms on site. Also in the fall of 1998, Kalee started a new job at the beach resort and condominium as a desk clerk on the weekends. Both Kalee and her friend Kim Kelderhouse worked together. Everyone would love to work with Kalee, and just to give you an idea of how thoughtful she was, there was a woman who was the housekeeping supervisor at the resort. Kalee had heard that this woman was in need of some cute outfits, so Kalee went through her closet and gave this woman some of her cute clothes. Talk about giving someone the clothes off your back.
Okay, Trace, it really sounds like you're already trying to paint her to be a saint, like a perfect little girl. Is that, am I reading too far into that? Or are you painting her as the all-American quintessential cuteness, polite, sweet, kind, gentle soul?
That's exactly who, from what I can tell, who Kalee was.
Okay.
Super sweet, super kind, super happy, just the light of the room.
Okay, well, all right, you did a good job summing that up. All right, I got it. Let's go. And now you're going to tell me some tragedy about her. I don't know if I like this, Trees. See, this is where I would change the channel.
I know, it's just it's horrible what happened to this sweet girl. It's horrible. Okay. It's horrible. It was a Monday night, February 16th, 1998. Kalee was working alone at the front desk of the resort. She was working until close, which was 8 p.m. Kim Kelderhouse, her friend that she worked with, and whom she normally worked with, she was off this night, and she had driven by the resort at approximately 7:30 p.m. She was driving her friends home and was passing the resort when she looked over, and she could actually see Kalee working, right? Because there's big windows when you look over, like if you're on the highway heading kind of north, if you look over, you could see right in, big windows. So she could see her there. It was close to closing time, but Kim thought if she could get everyone home in time, she would stop in and see Kalee. But as Kim was driving back toward the beach resort, it was close to 40 minutes later. As she was approaching the resort, she saw that the lights in the front desk area were off. So Kim turned around and went home. The next morning, Tuesday, February 17th at 7 a.m., the first person to arrive to work and enter the office was the maintenance man. The door was unlocked, and he walked in just like he did every morning. He didn't see anyone in the office, and he noticed there was a light on in the utility room. When he opened the door, instead of seeing the usual buckets, clothes irons, and cleaning supplies, he saw Kalee, and he saw blood. A lot of blood. He immediately shut the door and ran out of the office, but made sure to lock the office door. He ran to the nearest phone booth and called 911. His name was Zachary Madden. When police interviewed him, he was almost to the point of tears and was having a very difficult time talking about what he had seen. The officers saw blood smears on the drawers in the front office and noticed that some money was taken. When they approached the utility room, it was the worst they'd ever seen. Like I said, there was blood everywhere. On the floor, on the walls, on the ceiling. I mean everywhere. As they looked around the small room, they saw 3 clothes irons covered in blood and hair. Each iron was busted into pieces. Kalee was lying on the floor, and I'm presuming she was completely naked. One of the cords from the clothes irons was tightly wrapped around her neck. I can only imagine, and I don't think I can honestly even imagine the true horror of what was done to her. The best way to describe it, from a report that I found from govinfo.gov. It's a report and recommendation from the United States District Court of the Western District of Michigan, Northern Division. Quote, Kalee's body was found by the maintenance supervisor on the morning of February 17, 1998. This was a Tuesday. She had suffered 19 lacerations that extended to the bone, multiple facial and skull fractures, severe neck injuries consistent with strangulation, severe blunt force injuries to the torso, chest, abdomen, and pelvis, and extensive internal bleeding. Additionally, a metal rod of some sort had been forced into the decedent's vagina with such force that it lacerated her vagina and penetrated 2 inches into her pelvic bone. The decedent was alive when this injury was inflicted. Additionally, the blood on her breast had been smeared as if someone had stroked her breasts. There was so much debris everywhere in the small utility room that it took the detective who was processing the scene 6.5 hours just to get to Kalee's body. Now, mind you, Kalee was only about 3 to 4 feet away. Let's think about that for a minute. 6.5 hours in this small room with this young lady in the worst imaginable condition. How awful.
Every inch of that room had evidence on it. I mean, if what you're saying is the irons, right, and the blunt force trauma and all of that, they're beating her all over the place and choking her, and oh God, and even, I mean, it sounds like it's very, for it to be splattered and smeared all over the place, there was definitely a struggle. So that, like, really, like, is killing my insides right now to think that this girl was fighting to the ends, to the very, very end.
Yeah.
It is hemorrhaging all over the room while they're attacking her. Mm-hmm. Then she's fighting back. And, you know, oh, God, that's a horrific scene.
Horrific. Now, Christine.
It's horrific imagery is what I mean.
Let's think about this. A clothes iron, right? Pointy, heavy, sharp, like what you iron your freaking clothes with.
Yeah. So they were literally stabbing her bluntly.
Yeah, it's just unreal. Unreal. Well, there were so many shoe prints at the scene. They were on the floor in the maintenance room, you know, because there was so much blood. They were on the carpet in the office. And there was also shoe prints on Kalee's abdomen and shoulder.
Kicking her and stomping around and everything. Oh, my God. This is horrific imagery. I do not like it. Not one bit.
I know. It's brutal. It's beyond brutal. I don't even know if there's a word bad enough for what this is. I really don't. I've been trying to think about it. Like, how do I describe this? Horrific is not the word. Brutal is not the word. I don't know.
There's not a word strong enough.
There's really not.
Not that I can think of.
Yeah.
See, I don't understand why you and millions of other people like all this horror stuff. You painted a picture of Snow White, the perfect being, and now all of a sudden she's mauled and like, I don't even have the words for this imagery of what happens to her. This is too much bouncing all over the place. This is a big leap.
Well, you know why? It's because this is what's out there.
That's the most bananas part of it all.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. We have to be aware of all the good and the beautiful and the wonderful, but we also have to be very aware of all the dark and the evil that's out there.
I hate it. I don't like it. I'd rather stay on the light side.
A local reporter named Peter Fortin had received a call from a reliable contact at the Traverse City Police Department. He was told that he better get down there. Something really awful had happened. Now, Peter had been to many crime scenes in his career as a reporter, and because of his reputation, he was allowed on scene. Peter was in the program Forensic Files 2, Season 4, Episode 7, The Murder Irons, which aired in 2023. Now, this is 25 years after the brutal beating and murder of Kalee. And Peter, on several occasions, was still so shook and so emotional when talking about Kalee. He said, quote, "This girl was slaughtered. This person was an animal. They were not a human being. Kalee had been beaten over and over again with clothes irons that were housed in the utility room. Whoever it was that did this to Kalee beat her with an iron until it basically just fell to pieces. Then the attacker grabbed another iron until it did the same. Then a third. It was also the cord from the third iron that was wrapped around Kalee's neck. The irons that had blown to pieces from the beatings were just strewn everywhere around on the floor."
Yeah, like I said, she was fighting back, fighting for her life.
The detectives knew that Kalee punched out at 8 p.m. Her body temperature told police that she had to have died at 8 p.m. or just after. It was suspected that the killer had to have known her, known where she was, and knew she would be alone. There were no security cameras in the office or anywhere at the resort. I bet your sweet ass they have them now.
Yeah, I bet they do.
Mm-hmm.
At least I hope they do.
Yeah. Now, all the blood that was at the scene only belonged to Kalee. There were no fingerprints recovered, which told investigators that whoever did this had to have been wearing gloves. There were over 100 pieces of evidence collected at the scene. The only thing the killer left behind was his shoe tread prints. As I mentioned earlier in the show, is that there were many shoe print impressions found on the floor, but there were also very clear shoe print impressions found on Kalee's body. The detectives used something called leucocrystal violet on the bloody shoe impressions. Now, I've never heard of this before, so I looked it up and found the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Forensic Testing Services page that leucocrystal violet reacts with the heme group in blood to give it a violet color.
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you. You are a crime junkie, and you've never heard of luminol before?
This isn't luminol.
What's the difference?
The difference between luminol and leucocrystal violet is luminol will light up like neon paint in a black light when it's reacted with blood and you shut the lights off. That's what luminol does. Leucocrystal violet, they spray it on things that, okay, I can see a print here, but I can't see a whole bunch of detail. So what it does is it reacts to the blood and it gives us this deep, dark violet color. And what it does is it brings out all the details that you couldn't see with your eyes. It doesn't glow at all. It gets real dark and they're able to photograph it and see much more detail than they ever could with a naked eye. Okay. So that's the difference. I had to learn it too because I was like, what the heck is this? And the pictures I was looking at, like the tread impressions were so dark. I was like, what is that? And that's what it is. So when detectives looked at the shoe prints, they knew they were looking at a big foot, close to a size 12. Now that they had a very clear and defined sole print, detectives went to local stores to see if they could identify the sole and what type of shoe or boot matched it. They found a brand of boot called Caterpillar that matched the sole impression found on Kalee and the prints on the floor of the utility room. To make a solid determination that this was the brand of shoe, forensics traced the sole pattern of the Caterpillar boot on a sheet of acetate paper. Then they laid it over a life-size image of the sole impression from an enlarged photo of the sole impression on Kalee, and it was a perfect match. Now the detectives knew this was a work boot. They wanted to talk to Sid Black, the elevator repairman that worked at the beach condo and resort. It was reported that his behavior toward the female employees was inappropriate, but he was ruled out as he had left a few days prior to Kalee's murder with his family and returned later on the night of her murder. It was noted that he wore work boots, but they were not the type of boot that fit the description of the Caterpillar boot that they were looking for. Another person of interest was Zachary Madden. He was the maintenance man at the condo. Per Detective Rick Robbins, he said, quote, his energy just stunk. Zach gave all the girls that worked at the condo a very creepy vibe. Zach was also the one who found Kalee's body. He was brought to the station for a formal interview, and while being questioned, he had a very difficult time talking about it and was on the verge of crying. Zach did allow a search of his vehicle, and police thought that they had found something that looked like blood, but after testing was completed, it was not. Zach's wife worked in the ER with one of the detective's wives, and she made a statement that when she returned home from work, her husband was in bed sleeping, and this was around the time of the murder, so he was cleared at that point. With the news breaking of what had happened to Kalee, her friend Kim said, quote, you couldn't buy pepper spray. It was literally flying off the shelves. High school girls, college girls, everyone was buying it and carrying it. None of the girls were going anywhere in the dark of night. During the investigation, Detective Rick Robbins paid a visit to the dorms at the community college where Kalee attended. He spoke to her suite mate and learned that Kalee had recently broken up with her boyfriend. Their relationship had been on and off, but at this point, they were off. Even though they had broken up, her boyfriend was still trying to get back together with her. 2 days after Kalee's murder, detectives spoke with Dylan, the ex-boyfriend. Dylan worked at a heating and cooling business, and detectives noticed that he was wearing a pair of Caterpillar boots. The size looked like the size they were looking for. They also saw that Dylan had an older pair of the same brand of boots. Detectives took both pairs of boots to analyze them, but there was nothing of evidentiary value found. At this point, detectives were starting to wonder if this could have just been some random attack and that the attacker could be miles away at this point.
Or that he could have had just a third pair of Caterpillar boots. Like, why is that not an option? Or am I getting ahead of myself? I mean, he could have had another pair and then obviously got rid of them when they were covered in blood. Duh.
Right, he could have.
Or since he was covered his fingerprints, maybe he thought by covering his boots in rubber or plastic, that would have been sufficient too. So he could still be having those boots and wearing those boots because he was covered in latex.
He was the latex man.
I'm just saying, there was no pig fingerprints found either.
It's possible.
So maybe he was in garbage bags.
It's
maybe
possible.
He covered himself in garbage bags.
He could have.
I'm just saying.
All
it's
right.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead. What else did they find?
All right. So detectives also found a very small oddity in the utility room with Kalee. It was a tire valve stem. It had Katie's blood on it, and one strand of hair. However, the hair found did not have the root intact, which is where DNA can be extracted. They held on to the hair in the valve stem and placed it into evidence. As the detectives' best hope of finding the killer was tied to the boots, they decided that they would release this information to the public and presented this during a press conference asking the community for their help. There was a local man who was a radio host for WTCA radio from 6 to midnight, and his name was John Chandler. He played all the country song favorites during his shift. And on February 26th, 1998, 10 days after Kalee's murder and after the press conference, John was getting his tires changed at a local store named Tire Factory. While he was in the waiting room, he overheard a conversation of the service manager talking with the co-workers. What he heard was this. They were discussing that a particular person had not been into work and that this person wore caterpillar boots. They went on to say that this person said he had gotten some paint and stain on them, so he had to get different boots. It was also heard that this person has a horrible temper. For John, he knew in his gut that this was vital information. He left the tire factory as calm and collected as he could and went directly to the sheriff's department. Once John left, the detectives went immediately to the tire factory to speak with the manager. The conversation that was reported to them was confirmed to be a true statement. The man they were talking about was 25-year-old Kevin Holzer. He was the son of a man who owned the tire factory. When detectives spoke to employees at the shop, employees did confirm that Kevin wore Caterpillar boots, but after the murder occurred, he was no longer wearing that brand of boots. Detectives noticed that there were these little valve stems all over the floor at the shop. Employees that they interviewed said, when they were changing the tires, those valve stems would just pop right off and go flying. It wasn't uncommon when the employees went home to change their clothes to find valve stems falling out of their pockets. Now, the valve stem found in the utility room was making more sense to the detectives.
Aha! Who would have figured? The smoking valve stem. Who would have figured?
Thank God for that little stem. All right, now that they had his name, they found that Kevin was also renting room 106 at the beach condo and resort. Kevin was on site and interviewed at 8 a.m. the morning that Kalee's body was discovered on February 17th. Now, out of all the people that detectives interviewed that morning, Kevin was the only one who didn't ask what had happened. You would think that this would have perked the interest of the detectives at the time, but to be fair, during their interview with Kevin, he was quite calm and cooperative, and there were not any visible marks on him. And also keep in mind that the time the interviews were being conducted, the officers didn't know that they were looking for a large-size Caterpillar work boot or the valve stem as the scene was being processed. Kevin had been living at the beach resort for the past 6 months. When detectives went back to look at the interview notes with Kevin, he said that he had to head off to work, and the place of employment was the tire factory. Again, something that at the time wouldn't have raised any flags. Could you imagine? Wouldn't you be kicking yourself if you were the detective like, oh my God, you had him right there?
Yeah. Probably. I'm going to the tire factory. What'd you find in all the blood? A tire stem. Yeah. Yeah, that should have perked their interest, but they totally missed it.
Well, they didn't know yet. Because think about it. You've got detectives processing the scene, and then you've got detectives interviewing people that were living at the resort. So it's kind of in concert with one another.
But when they review their notes and they have meetings about this, you know what I mean? Just
like,
as nurses, we would do rounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
What do you got? What do I got? And they cross-reference each other's work to look for things that pop up to them, which is what makes them detectives, right?
Yeah.
They got to look at all the stuff to tie things together. They're definitely kicking themselves for missing that, because once that one team said, well, we got a hair and a tire stem, but we don't got a follicle. They were like, tire stem. Okay. And then the other guy says, oh, well, this one's excuse was that, and this one's excuse was this, and this one's excuse was that he had to leave because he had to go to work at the tire factory.
Right.
Tire. Do you know what I mean? Like, tire was the key word and all of that.
Right.
But I'm sure there were probably other crazy crossovers. So, although they're kicking themselves with hindsight being 2020. You know?
Yeah, why aren't you reviewing your notes, dude? Like on the daily.
Yeah, but hindsight is always 2020. You know what I mean? You don't know what you know until you know it.
I know, but I'm just still saying. Do they look at their notes the next day? Later that night? Conference before you go home? Break for the shift? Pass it on to the next?
They missed it.
Damn it.
A little clue. They missed.
Yep. Yep. So another woman that they had interviewed on the morning of the 17th had asked the detectives if the master keys had been stolen. She asked this because when she returned home to her condo Monday night, the 16th, she went to put her key into the condo door and the door just opened. Detectives did confirm that the master's keys had been stolen. Can you imagine what was going through her mind? Had she really been lucky enough to miss the murder in her condo?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I just had an epiphany. Remind me at the end of the story to come back to this. It's important.
Okay. I'll try.
Okay, I know. Good luck. Good luck to us both. All right, so Kim, Kaylee's friend and co-worker, knew who Kevin was because he was always popping into the front desk office and asking for things and lingering there when Kaylee was working. And one of the things Kevin was always asking Kaylee for was to unlock his condo with the extra set of keys they had because he always seemed to forget his keys. But Kim said that he never really made Kaylee feel that uncomfortable. Kim said he was always polite. And oh my God, roll that in with the epiphany I got to talk to you about.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Kevin was a big dude. He was 6 foot 4 inches tall and weighed approximately 225 pounds. He was into martial arts and was very athletic looking. One detective said that he looked like he was a football player. As you can surmise, he had big feet. Later in the investigation, once they learned Kevin worked at the tire store, they started digging to see if he had a criminal background. They found he had a rape charge that had been thrown out just 5 years earlier. With crimes being quite low in Traverse City, police took another look at a crime that had happened just weeks before Kaylee's murder, thinking that, perhaps they could be connected. There was a woman that was walking home late one night after the bars had closed. As she was walking home, a man popped out, grabbed her, and pulled her into an alley and commenced to beating her nearly to death. He may have thought that she was either dead or would die very soon and left her in the alley. Now, whether or not the woman played dead and this is why her attacker walked away, I can't say. But if it was, smart move on her.
Okay, so it wasn't really about rape. It was just about beating. He got off on beating defenseless girls.
Yeah. Now, if you think about it, there was no evidence of rape, but he did ram that iron rod.
Yeah, but like you said, 5 years earlier, there was a charge of rape on him. Maybe because he didn't fully sexually assault her. Like you did say something about there was rammed vaginal something, but it was something rammed so hard that it went 2 inches into her pelvic bone. So maybe this woman was assaulted with something, but because it wasn't his body, they weren't calling it rape. We don't know the details of that.
Right. Well, there was definitely no talk of semen recovered at all. No talk of it.
He did sexually assault her.
He did. And you know what? I'm going to pause right there. I don't want to say anymore.
Okay.
Because there's something. So, all right. So at the scene in the alley, there was only a smidge of evidence, and that was a shoe impression in the snow. Now remember, this is winter, and with it being a few weeks before Kaylee's murder in February, that puts this crime sometime in January. Detectives had to move quickly to photograph the shoe impression in the snow before it melted. Luckily, they got it. Now I know what you're thinking, but no, it was not a caterpillar boot impression. After searching shoe tread prints in the database, detectives nailed it down to a shoe brand called K-Swiss. And guess what else? It was a large shoe size imprint. So could these attacks be connected? It's very possible, as there were 2 attacks within a month. One woman almost died, and then there's the brutal attack on Kalee. Detectives learned that after the public release of the type of size of boots they were looking for, that Kevin was nowhere to be found. Shortly after discovering this, police had put out a warrant for his arrest. When detectives searched his room at the beach resort and condominiums, they couldn't find any evidence such as blood. Even though they looked in the traps and drains in his sinks and shower, there were no bloody clothes and certainly not the caterpillar boots they were looking for. But what they did find in his closet was a pair of K-Swiss tennis shoes, of which a photograph was taken. A local resident and friend of Kevin's is a man named Mike Mattoon. He said, quote, "I heard about the murder of Kalee Bruce and I was shocked. that. I don't know why the killer picked her in particular. I think it was just that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's gruesome, horrible, animalistic. Mike also said, quote, "It was an average Friday night. I was sitting with my friend at a club having a couple of drinks. Then my pager just starts going off like crazy. It was all of my friends from Alma and my roommate and stuff. I was like, what's going on? Because everyone's putting 911 after their number, which always meant an emergency. I got my old Motorola flip phone out and called my roommate, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, dude, where the fuck is Kevin? And I go, oh man, he's sitting right here, man. He goes, it was on Channel 9 News, dude. He's wanted for murder in Traverse City. Get the hell away from him right now. So I hung up the phone, and Kevin looks over at me, and this heavy, heavy, heavy cloud came down. I'm thinking, man, this guy's already killed one person. What's going to keep him from killing me? And he's sitting right next to me. I mean, like, right there. My heart started beating, and all I could think of to say was, oh, it's just a bad snowstorm or whatever. I just kind of like played it off, like as nonchalant as I could about it. And I'm like, I better go. My girlfriend's paging me. He's like, yeah, I should probably get going too. So I dropped him off at his car. As soon as he got out, I peeled away and I took a deep breath and I said, I made it. I actually survived. Mike then went to the Meridian police station and told them that he was just with Kevin Holzer, and told them that he was driving a gold Trans Am with T-tops, and he's probably heading south from the way it looked when I left him. A BOL, which is Be on the Lookout, was put out statewide. The Toledo Police Department was actually able to locate a gold Trans Am, and that's amazing, and it was abandoned in a parking lot. They found a security guard that had actually talked to Kevin, and he had told the guard that he was getting on the Amtrak train heading to Chicago. They located Kevin pretty quickly, arrested him, and no one was hurt. Kevin was brought back to Traverse City. Now they had to nail down all the evidence to convict him. So remember the hair I told you about that was on the valve stem? Well, the testing was completed by the state crime lab. The blood, of course, was identified as Kalee's, and the hair was identified as Kevin Holzer's pubic hair. That's why I had to stop Christine.
Oh, okay.
It was identified through mitochondrial DNA, because remember, the root was not intact. But that's freaking amazing.
Yeah. So his deal was he liked to brutalize women and then get off with himself.
Must have.
That's kind of what I'm vibing.
Yeah. Well, why is he so brutal?
Or the valve stem flew in his pants, like his coworker said, when they take that clothes off. But then again, he probably unzipped his pants and didn't realize, because of the mayhem that he just caused, that a valve stem flung out. I'm sure there was a lot of huffing and puffing after what he had just done.
Yeah, and the detectives think, now they're just surmising, so it could have come out of his clothes, like you said, like we talked about earlier in the show, but they're also thinking that it could have been because not only are these valve stems flying around, landing in their clothes and whatnot, you're also walking around with really thick, deep tread on your boots.
Yeah,
that's true, right?
Been stuck in it.
Yeah, because he's stomping and...
But it had one of his pubic hairs in it. So I'm thinking this valve stem was closer to the pubes than being stuck in his boot with his pube on it. So I don't know. Maybe the detectives weren't so bright.
Maybe they weren't.
It was an easy miss for them with the
I'm
going to the tire shop.
Somehow that damn valve got in his pants.
Maybe we're giving them more credit than they deserve.
We could be because my epiphany is going to be really awesome. It's so good. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I think I figured out something good. But I'm going to wait.
Are we done with?
No.
Oh, okay.
I got a little bit more.
Okay.
So from the time they arrested Kevin, he never said a word. He immediately lawyered up. Detectives felt that over the 6 months that Kevin had lived in the condominium, that he had been grooming Kalee. Oddly enough, Kalee had started working at the beach condo at the same time Kevin moved in. Coinky dinky, huh? I'm just thinking that myself. Isn't that a coincidence? Maybe he moved in because he was stalking her.
Maybe. Where was he living before that, you said? Did you say that?
Somewhere in Traverse City, because his dad owned the tire place.
Oh.
But I don't know where exactly it was he lived.
And not for nothing, can we just mention that because his dad owns a business, maybe they were a little bit affluent, which is maybe how he got out of the one 5 years earlier?
You know this is true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Daddy had some money.
Yeah, Daddy had money to get him out of the first rape, maybe. First rape abuse.
Look at us figuring it all
more
out.
Abuse than rape. Look at us solving that one.
We solved it. Oh my gosh, there's more.
All right, so what else?
Okay, so June 21st, 1999, Kevin Holzer was tried for the murder of Kalee Bruce. During the trial, John Chandler took the stand. Remember him? He's the DJ from the radio station that overheard the conversation at Tire Factory. He said, quote, "I'm on the stand and taking my oath, and I got to look at the eyes of pure evil in that courtroom. Dark, cold eyes. If it wasn't for him being arrested, how many more women would have been killed in our area? How many more women would have been killed in the state?" Kevin Holzer was convicted in October of 1999. He was given life without the possibility of parole. When the detectives were able to collect the belongings of Kevin, they took his K-Swiss shoes and they noticed a red speck on the stitching. They tested it and it was blood. Guess whose blood it was, Christine?
The girl that got abused in the alley.
Yep. So he was connected to that one as well. And he has to deal with those additional years or whatever they gave him. I don't know what they gave him for that, but it got tacked on. I mean, he's in life forever. He's a lifer. He's going to die there.
Did they dig more? Like if there were three, potentially three, the one 5 years early, we have to say, what is it? Allegedly 5 years prior. And then the one in the alley.
Yep.
And then this poor girl.
Yep. Kalee.
I mean, that's three that we're semi-aware of.
Exactly.
How many more were there? There were probably many more.
There could have been. And isn't it funny how after Kevin was convicted off the streets, the assaults had stopped in Traverse City?
That's very good. He was obviously an evil little bugger.
He was. Now, are you ready for my epiphany?
Yeah.
It's so good. So, remember the woman that I told you about? She tried to get in her condo and the door just was open. It wasn't locked.
Yeah.
And she'd ask, "Hey, did he steal the master keys?" And they're like, "Yes, he sold the master keys."
Yeah.
Here's why I think they didn't find any evidence of blood in the drains and the traps and the sinks and the showers. He got into her condo, and showered in there.
Yeah, probably.
And then got rid of all of his shit. It never happened. They never thought about it. If they did think about it, it was never done. No, this came to me as I was doing the final read for the show tonight. I was like, oh my God. Just what we were talking about too, with them not going back and reading their notes. Didn't they think it was funny that the dude had taken master keys? This chick is saying, "Hey, my door was open." They're down the road saying, "There's no evidence of blood or anything. How could that be? This is such a brutal crime." They never put that together.
Yeah, but if he had the master keys, he could have cleaned up anywhere in the condo. He could. I'm sure they have a rec area. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I hope that the detectives and the people that were, analyzing that crime scene, that the whole building became a crime scene once they realized that he had master keys.
But they didn't. There's nothing that I read that they searched any place else other than.
Okay, so that's right there with the freaking tire station, the tire company.
Yeah.
That's right there. Valves come in the tire. Then they have somebody else saying that he has a master key because my door is open and he would always lose his keys and this and that. And here's this whole story, and then you don't find anything in it. That's another little nugget that they totally missed.
Totally missed, because when you say, as the detective, that's not good. We should probably go look at your condo.
Yeah, but also you have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they were just thinking that this might not be the guy. Like, they weren't really helping.
But they didn't know anything at that point, right?
Right.
They didn't know anything, but...
There's a lot of people that they look at for crimes a lot of the times. They hopefully, if they're doing their job right, they don't just look in one or two places. They look in several. And you can't have them going down that large of a rabbit hole, with lab testing and everything for all of those people.
No, but
they just got to go with their gut on.
Yeah, but
their gut wasn't saying that this evil spawn was evil. I'm not such bright detectives. I'm not arguing a good case for these detectives.
No, you're not, girl. And girl, listen, if I was the detective and this chick told me that and I'm like, yes, keys were stolen, would you mind, can I come up to your condo and take a look around?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why wasn't that like the next thing that came out of that person's mouth? And after I read the paragraph after that, when I said, oh my gosh, remind me about this one, I totally believe he was maybe the grooming thing, or maybe I think my thing is he was just stalking her, because how many times did he come to her? And it was a plan. How many times did he come? It was always his keys, his keys, his keys. He's watching where she's getting the fucking master keys time and time and time again. Was there a code? Was there a whatever to get to the keys? Because think about it. He stalked her. He knew when she would be alone. He committed that murder, took the master keys, went into that chick's condo, showered up, got rid of all of his shit. It was a perfect plan.
Yeah. He probably was a stalker and a attacker.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. I should have been on the...
that is the most dangerous thing about stalkers, is stalkers usually do kill their prey, because that is what they're stalking.
They have to have it.
That's why stalkers, it's such a serious thing. Like when people get to that point where they're starting to stalk people, and I know, you see, this is what I kind of lecture people on when, like, they break up with somebody or whatever, and they're infatuated with their social media all of a sudden. That is a mild form of stalking, and that is a slippery slope to crazy town.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens with people that don't have other people to tell them that they're sliding down the stalker trail. They just become full-fledged stalkers.
It's crazy.
Like, if you think about it, we all know somebody that's a mild stalker. Do you know what I mean? Like, your friend that just talks about their ex, like, way too much. And they know what they did last night when they haven't talked to them in, like, 6 months. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all have that friend.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I do.
That's what always creeps me out, is because that is ultimately what a stalker becomes. A stalker, when you stalk something, it's prey to you, which is crazy bananas.
Mm-hmm.
So, if any of our listeners ever find themselves wanting to know something about someone who is purposefully staying away from them or doesn't really know they exist, please stop yourself. Don't let anybody's actions or anybody outside of you have any effect on your own happiness. Find what you're looking for in yourself, please.
Please.
Don't go to the cuckoo lane.
Don't go to the cuckoo's nest. Keep driving.
No, for real. It's kind of creepy. It's always creeped me out when people get like that.
Well, that's it. That is today's story, and it makes you sick. I've been thinking about this girl for days.
And super horrible, because she was just an innocent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I kind of like, that's the pattern in this world. Like, when things are really, really bad, the flip side's going to be really, really good.
You just gotta be in the know, and you gotta, the best we can. We can't prevent everything. I mean, but you just gotta be aware. Know that this kind of crazy shit is out there, and protect yourself. Listen to the signs. Listen to your flags. Something doesn't feel right. Something's not right. Something is not right. Listen to your gut. So anyway, that is today's story. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Come back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.